Members of the government of the host country, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I declare open the United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, Habitat 3, and call to order its first plenary meeting. In accordance with the Rule 17 of the Provisional Rules of Procedure, I will serve as a temporary president of the conference until the election of its president. I should like to extend a warm welcome to all of you, and I look forward to a successful and productive conference. Ladies and gentlemen, as representatives are aware, this conference is held pursuant to UN General Assembly Resolutions 67-2012, 68-239 of 27 December 2013, 69-226 of 19 December 2014, and 70/210 of 22nd December 2015, with the objective to secure renewed political commitment for sustainable urban development, assessing accomplishments to date, addressing poverty, as well as identifying and addressing new and emerging challenges. The conference will result in a concise, focused, forward-looking, and action-oriented outcome document, which shall reinvigorate the global commitment to and support for housing and sustainable urban development and the implementation of a new urban agenda. Now I'll move to agenda item 2, election of the president. I now invite the conference to proceed with the election of its president. It is my understanding that there is a general agreement among all delegations to elect His Excellency Mr. Rafael Correa, Constitutional President of the Republic of Ecuador, as President of the conference. May I take it that the conference wishes to elect by acclamation His Excellency Mr. Rafael Correa, Constitutional President of the Republic of Ecuador, as its President? Thank you. It is so decided. It gives me great pleasure to declare His Excellency Mr. Rafael Correa as the President of the United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, Habitat 3. On behalf of all the participants in the conference, I congratulate His Excellency Mr. Rafael Correa on his election, and I invite the President to take his seat at the podium to take over the proceedings of the conference. I invite protocol to escort His Excellency.
Buenos días a todas y a todos.
Good morning, everyone.
and thank you for having elected me president of the meeting. Your Excellency Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished heads of state and government, Your Excellency Peter Thompson, President of the 71st session of the General Assembly, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor and privilege for me to have been elected President of the United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, Habitat 3. Thank you very much. And welcome to Ecuador. We're very close to latitude 0. It's the most compact, mega-diverse country on the planet. If we add together terrestrial and marine biodiversity, Ecuador has the largest number of species on the planet in a territory a little more than 283,000 square kilometers, less than the U.S. state of Nevada. Welcome to Quito, the first city that was declared by UNESCO as a humanities cultural heritage city. It's a house for all, and it welcomes the UN Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, Habitat 3. Jointly with delegations of 193 countries, mayors, international organizations, representatives of civil society, we will renew our global commitment to sustainable development by adopting a new urban agenda. This document includes a declaration and the Quito Implementation Plan, which defines follow-up mechanisms to follow up on agreements that we're going to reach in this conference. We look forward to a decisive commitment by all member states to meet these goals in the next 20 years. Latin America is the most urban region of the world as a result of people leaving rural areas and concentrating resources in cities. This is the result of erroneous concepts of development in the post-war period, when it was believed that the traditional, and that includes the rural, is bad, and the urban was a synonym of modernity. In 1955, 45% of Latin America's population lived in the cities. Today, it's 81%. This led to shantytowns in Ecuador, favelas in Brazil, what is euphemistically called... Microphone for the President. Microphone for the President, please. What is euphemistically called young cities in Peru, but simply speaking, slums. These shantytowns, their people are poor. They live worse and pay more. There's no public work because the lots are not legally delimited. Water transported by cisterns costs 5 times as much as water transported by pipes. And there are people who traffic in land, real mafias, who swindle and deceive people by providing so-called security services. It's so common in Latin America that people believe it's part of a kind of folklore, but it's a reality of our misery and exclusion. We're still paying our debt to the vision of the so-called modernizers. Bad urban development is a very serious problem for us in Ecuador. We declared it to be one of the pillars of the government's program once we were re-elected in 2013. Far earlier than we even knew that we were going to host this conference in Ecuador. As the government, we declared in 2010 zero tolerance of shantytowns. And we've made great progress, but the problem still exists. Unfortunately, it's not only a matter of poverty and lack of order, it's also a cultural issue. It became customary to settle in whatever place, including literally on stagnant water, and then at any cost demand landfill, basic services, and in general intervention by the state. Also politicking benefits from this human tragedy through requiring assistance, exploiting the cultural atavism of victimization when they claim that they are poor and homeless and therefore can settle wherever they want. To change this reality, there are two serious major problems. The weakness of local government, which we call municipal government or municipalities in Ecuador, directly responsible for urban development. And the second problem, exclusion as a result of the market system. In our country, municipal revenue largely depends on allocations by the central government, 82% on average. They call themselves decentralized autonomous governments, but real autonomy should be financial. The largest cities, Quito and Guayaquil, depend on the government respectively to the extent of 55 and 58%, but there are some municipalities where this dependence reaches 99.8%, dependence on central government allocations. With return to democracy, the number of municipalities rose from 118 at the end of the 70s to 221. With the exception of the Amazon region, the law established that a settlement should have at least 50,000 inhabitants to acquire the status of municipality. But 70% do not reach that threshold. The lack of capabilities makes it difficult to fulfill municipal authority. In particular, the delimitation of territory and control and use of the occupation of land. Add to this that often, as I already mentioned, there's a lack of political will to do that. Even when these settlements arise in high-risk areas, posing great danger to human life. On the other hand, the poor do not exist as far as the market is concerned because they don't have purchasing power. There's practically no spontaneous supply of social housing. It will always be easier and more profitable to build a house costing $200,000 than 10 houses of $20,000 each. Something like that happens with regard to credit. The poor can't get it because they cannot offer guarantees. Therefore, the state must intervene. It's not only about social justice. It's about avoiding serious social decay, new forms of poverty, trafficking in land, illegal occupation of land, overcrowding and dangerous conditions in our main cities, what the economists call negative external factors. In Ecuador, we have closed the circle of support by giving through public banks financing to the builders of social housing and to families. We provide direct subsidies and financing, in particular through the system of cooperatives. The program has been successful, but a lot remains to be done, and the processes must accelerate. With the right will, political decision, and putting human beings in the center as a priority, we hope that if we annually invest 1% of our GDP between the public and private sector, in 10 years' time, we will have resolved the shortage of housing. Latin America is a region with the greatest inequality on the planet. In a few minutes, in our cities, you can see houses built on water and then exclusive gated communities where the service staff cannot enter through the main door so that no one should think that they're members of the family. Public investment in infrastructure and services raises the price of land and creates illegitimate benefits for a few, feeding inequality. In 9 municipalities of the country, in our calculation, about $600 million a year get into private hands through value added generated by state investment. It's a typical example of the socialization of costs and the privatization of revenues. We also have such phenomena as hoarding and speculation in land to raise their value. I could never understand why in all civilized societies speculation in food, particularly in areas of in periods of hunger or famine, is punished. But speculation in land, which is required for agriculture and human development, is not. Finally, simple municipal decisions such as reclassifying land from rural to urban can raise the value of land by multiple times. And at the same time, the owners have invested nothing, not a penny. Any increase in the value of an asset which is not the direct result of actions by the respective owner or economic agent constitutes illegitimate gain and immoral gain. If privileged information was used, we're becoming, as a result, a patrimonial society, further away from meritocratic democracy, which we want to have. In the weeks to come, I will send to the National Assembly a draft law establishing that this illegal value added should get into the hands of municipalities. This is one of the most revolutionary things that we're going to do. And it will help the real estate developers as well, because their principal restriction is the rampant speculation with urban land. Brothers and sisters, 6 months ago, Ecuador suffered the worst tragedy of the past 70 years. An earthquake on the coast, up to almost 8 on the Richter scale. I'd like to thank all the countries that showed solidarity at a time of this great disaster. Because of this tragedy, organizing this conference was a challenge, and its success offers the best proof that in spite of the pain and the suffering, the will of the Ecuadorian people is unbending. Many thanks to the United Nations for having chosen us as the host country, and many thanks to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development of Ecuador for organizing this event. Participation in this event has exceeded all our expectations. We apologize for the problems that some of you encountered during the weekend in getting accreditation. Interminable lines, hours and hours of waiting. The UN was in charge of accreditation. And when we transmit to the UN our concern in view of the delays, we got the response that this type of conference always requires people to wait online for hours and hours. We're a country that has eliminated lines in public service to improve our cities, and I think we can also eliminate lines and waiting in UN events. Dear friends, change is at the heart of the world. The right to the city creates a framework where our citizens will have a better life. Welcome once again to the ecocenter of this planet, Ecuador. Feel at home and we'll have great success. Once again, welcome.
As Minister of Urban Development of Ecuador, Mr. Duarte, it is a pleasure to be here with you presiding over this session, this opening session. Distinguished heads of state and government, heads of national delegations, Mayor of Quito, distinguished mayors and representatives of local and regional government, distinguished co-chairs and members of the Preparatory Committee for Habitat 3, co-facilitators of the new urban agenda, Mr. Damas Luna Carona, distinguished representatives of the General Assembly, of fellows and of members of local administrations, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my thanks to the people of Ecuador, and in particular to the President, Rafael Correa, and the Mayor of the city of Quito, Mr. Mauricio Rodas, for their generous hospitality and the warm reception in Quito. Thank you for the effort to welcome over 40,000 people from all over the world to join us during these days in the House of Culture of Quito. Distinguished heads of state and government, I thank you for joining us on such an important day. We are proud to be witnesses to the culmination of the preparation process for the new urban agenda, following 3 years of debates and discussions, which have been very productive, involving all of you. Together, we have been able to develop a new strategy for sustainability in our countries, our cities, and our world. The new urban agenda opens the doors to a new stage in prosperity and hope for the future. Our cities have now been converted into the main engine for development and prosperity and generate most of the new jobs that are appearing in the new economy. However, our analysis of urbanization of the past 20 years, from Istanbul 96 to Quito 2016, reveals that current urban practices still have major deficiencies in terms of sustainability. The new urban agenda is a set of strategies to reduce and turn back negative trends, calling for a new urban development model to promote equality, prosperity, and sustainability in environmental and social terms. The new urban agenda is a relevant contribution for success of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and for the prosperity of millions of people throughout our world. It is time for city planning and urbanization to become a strategy for sustainable development, a cornerstone of prosperity policies at national and local levels. We must address urbanization not as extra spending, but as an investment in the future. And the cost of urbanization is minimal in comparison to the value that it can generate. We must look at urban planning as a strategy for social transformation, creating new jobs, a range of opportunities for all, which allows us to address the biggest challenge of our times in the years to come, which is achieving a mass generation of employment for a growing population throughout the world, with a large growth in the young population. This requires us to go back to the basic principles of urbanization. First of all, we must recognize the legislative framework for urbanization. It is based on the principle of the law. Secondly,
to the benefits of urbanization. A vision that all persons are able to enjoy equal rights and fundamental freedoms, including gender equality, guided by the principles of the Charter of the United Nations and grounded in the Universal Human Rights Declaration. Integrated urban planning is the core of the new urban agenda. We need to design our cities and territories in an innovative way, with a long-term vision of a sound green economy, protection of cultures and inclusive cities for all. And only in this way we will be able to build sustainable and safer societies. There is an urgent need to rethink our mobility systems and change the physical shapes of our cities with mixed land use, prevent urban sprawl and avoid spatial and socio-economical segregation and gentrification. The new urban agenda urges us to value public spaces, protect the environment and food provision, and balance market-led spatial development with social and cultural values and sustainable local economic development. Everybody should have access to infrastructure, urban basic services, employment opportunities, and adequate affordable housing. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am inspired to see the visionary ideas of the new urban agenda together to have the knowledge to change our city for the better. This will require a strong coordination among different planning scales, the policies that guide urbanization among all the different levels of administration. I would like to appeal to governments, international and regional organizations, including UN agencies, international and multilateral financial institutions, regional development banks, the private sector and other stakeholders to work together to minimize the duplication of efforts and enhance coordination in the implementation of the new urban agenda. The new urban agenda envisages land and housing policies as a guide for the spatial development of our cities, which should ensure inclusiveness, affordability, resiliency, and the preparation for climate change. This vision that we share will come to be realized through a social and consistent financial plan. Guided by the new urban agenda, I would like to call for integrated financial frameworks that are embedded into coherent policy frameworks and fiscal decentralization processes. The good news is that urbanization generates value and wealth, and will provide the value required by itself. But to achieve that objective, a value-sharing policy is absolutely needed. Without it, as the President Correa has said, there is no way that sound urbanization can be properly financed. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, most of all, we need commitment. Last year was historic in terms of commitments to improve the living conditions of our common world. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted, including the Sustainable Development Goals. Among them, especially goal number 11 recognizes the crucial role of cities and urbanization as an endogenous source of development. The Addis Ababa Action Agenda of the Third International Conference on Financing for Development, the Paris Agreement under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030, among others, paved the way for the new urban agenda. We need commitments to make a change. We need to face the real Gordian knot of good urbanization, urban land legislation at the service of the common interest, effective legislation on value sharing, and a public-private partnership where every part plays by the same rules. Urbanization well done is a very creative aspect of the human society and a very efficient instrument of development. But it does not come without a very committed and participatory process with transparency, public and private accountability, and with a radical stance against corruption. Over the past 3 years, I have seen very important contributions by the United Nations system, local governments, and stakeholders at the 3 preparatory committees that UN Habitat 3 has participated. Over 40 UN agencies, funds and programs organized under the UN Task Team for Habitat 3, and also the General Assembly of Partners constituted by the 16 permanent constituent groups and over 1,100 unique organizations with over 58,000 networks have been involved in the preparation of the new urban agenda. I would like to commend the General Assembly of Partners for Habitat 3 in particular, which they have played a very important role in uniting in a common platform all the major groups. I am delighted to announce that we were able to pull together throughout the entire preparatory process for the conference over 36,000 participants from 142 countries. We held 7 thematic meetings across all regions, 4 regional meetings, over 35 urban breakfasts, over 22 urban journalist academies, and over 22 national urban forums in all regions. We have received more than 120 urban national reports, which have contributed to elaborate the regional urban reports. This preparatory session brought forth 11 regional and thematic declarations and 10 policy unit recommendations and over 120 national reports. This extremely fruitful outcome accounts for the distinct interests and myriad of partners towards the future of cities in the new urban agenda. This process has represented an extremely high level of participation in the history of the United Nations. For the first time, local authorities participated in a direct dialogue with member states in the week that it was set for that in New York. The same happened with the stakeholders around the Global Task Force. This clearly shows me that together we are stronger, and we have been able to create an immense wealth of knowledge on urbanization, and also in inspiring a roadmap for a future better direction of urbanism. This participation and political commitment needs also to go into action, and I envisage to see that the new urban agenda becomes a key instrument for national, subnational and local governments in all relevant stakeholders to achieve sustainable urban development. I am urging all of you today to come together to bring you the different and various skills and knowledge for all fields of expertise and to work together to implement this new urban agenda in your own countries and at all levels of governance. Let the new Habitat 3 legacy be one that we are proud of and which our children and grandchildren can enjoy safely and happily. The Quito Conference has provided a great opportunity for all of us to start building our partnership through the Quito Implementation Plan, which already can count 36 voluntary national commitments towards implementing the new urban agenda. This gives an excellent quick start for the major tasks ahead of us. Habitat 3 is a critical milestone in shaping the vision for the future development of cities and human settlements, and indeed, solutions for the complex challenges of urbanization can only be found by bringing together member states, multilateral organizations, local governments, private sector, civil society. I thank you all dearly for your contribution and your throughout process of preparation for Habitat 3. I would also like to extend my sincere gratitude to the co-chairs of the preparatory committee, Maria de los Angeles Duarte and Madame Maryse Bouthier from France, and Mr. Jaime Silva from Chile. We have played a very important role with the rest of the board of the preparatory committee in making possible this success. Quisiera finalmente dar mi más sincero agradecimiento.
And finally, I'd like to sincerely thank the co-facilitators of the process of drafting a final agreement, Ambassador Lourdes Ortiz Paraguirre of the Philippines, and Vamos Luna Correa of Mexico. Many thanks for the great commitment and noble efforts that have made it possible for us to come to Quito today with a new urban agenda already agreed. I also wanted to thank the hundreds of volunteers who are extremely helpful to us in holding this conference. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude this statement by recalling that urbanization is a collective process which involves participation by all. It's an art and a science. Years ago, one great thinker, Sophocles, in Antigona, said something that today remains as vital as ever. Many overwhelming things exist, but none as large as the human being. And this human being is a thinker, but also is filled with great rage and great passion. And this is something that we should bear in mind. Urbanization should continue to be one of the most important outcomes of human culture. It's our obligation to do our best every day. Thank you very much.
De conformidad con la decisión 4/2016 del Comité Preparatorio de la Conferencia, la sesión de apertura debería incluir también una declaración del presidente del Consejo Económico y Social. Sin embargo, debido a un compromiso anterior, al presidente del Consejo le ha resultado imposible participar en la conferencia. Hemos entonces escuchado al último orador de la sesión de apertura de la conferencia. Distinguidos jefes de Estado y de Gobierno, ministros, excelencias, señores y señoras, antes de proceder al examen de las cuestiones de organización de acuerdo con el programa provisional de la conferencia, se informa a las delegaciones de que todos los documentos oficiales están también disponibles en el sitio web de la conferencia. La conferencia procederá ahora a examinar el tema 3 del programa provisional titulado Aprobación del Reglamento. Las delegaciones tienen ante sí una nota de la Secretaría publicada con la asignatura A.226/2, en la que figura el reglamento provisional de la conferencia. Puedo considerar que la conferencia desea aprobar el reglamento que figura en el documento A.226/2. En vista de que no hay objeciones, así queda acordado. La conferencia concluye así su examen del tema 3 del programa. La conferencia procederá ahora a examinar el tema 4 del programa provisional titulado Aprobación del Programa. Quisiera señalar a la atención de las delegaciones el documento A.226/1, que contiene el programa provisional de la conferencia. Puedo considerar que la conferencia desea aprobar el programa que figura en el documento A/conferencia.226/1. En vista de que no hay objeciones, así queda acordado. La conferencia concluye así su examen del tema 4 del programa. Tema 5. La conferencia resumirá ahora su examen del tema 5 del programa titulado Elección de los miembros de la mesa, con excepción del presidente. De conformidad con el artículo 6 del reglamento, la conferencia elegirá ahora, de entre los representantes de los estados participantes y teniendo en cuenta la necesidad de asegurar el carácter representativo de la mesa, 14 vicepresidentes y un relator general. En lo que respecta a la elección de los vicepresidentes, se me ha informado que hay, de acuerdo general entre las delegaciones, para elegir los siguientes países. De los estados de África, Kenia, Nigeria y el Senegal. De los estados de Asia y el Pacífico, Filipinas y el Estado de Palestina. De los estados de Europa Oriental, la República Checa, Estonia y la Federación de Rusia. De los estados de América Latina y el Caribe, Argentina. De los estados de Europa Occidental y otros estados, no hay nominaciones recibidas hasta este momento. Puedo considerar entonces que la conferencia desea elegir a la Argentina, el Estado de Palestina, Estonia, la Federación de Rusia, Filipinas, Kenia, Nigeria, la República Checa y el Senegal para ocupar la vicepresidencia por aclamación. En vista de que no hay objeciones, así queda acordado. En nombre de la conferencia, felicito a los vicepresidentes por su elección. La elección de los vicepresidentes pendientes como se hayan comunicado las candidaturas. Repito, la elección de los vicepresidentes pendientes se celebrará tan pronto como se hayan comunicado las candidaturas. Invito ahora a la conferencia a proceder a la elección del relator general de la conferencia. Se me ha informado de que hay acuerdo general entre las delegaciones para elegir al señor Mamadou Diop del Senegal, relator general de la conferencia. De conformidad con el artículo 6 del reglamento, ¿puedo considerar que la conferencia desea elegir por aclamación al señor Mamadou Diop del Senegal, relator general de la conferencia? Muy bien, en vista de que no hay objeciones, así queda acordado. En nombre de la conferencia, felicito al señor Mamadou Diop del Senegal por su elección como relator general de la conferencia y lo invito a que ocupe su asiento en el estrado. La conferencia ha concluido así esta etapa de su examen del tema 5 del programa. La conferencia procederá ahora a examinar el tema 6 del programa titulado Organización de los Trabajos, incluido el establecimiento de los órganos subsidiarios y otras cuestiones de organización. La conferencia tiene ante sí una nota de la Secretaría titulada Cuestiones de organización y de procedimiento, que figura en el documento A/conferencia.226/3. Puedo considerar que la conferencia desea aprobar la organización de los trabajos que figura en el documento A/conf.226/3. En vista de que no hay objeciones, así queda acordado. La conferencia concluye así la presente etapa del examen del tema 6 del programa. Distinguidos jefes de Estado y de Gobierno, ministros, excelencias, señoras y señores, la conferencia comenzará ahora su debate general con arreglo al tema 8 del programa. De conformidad con la organización de los trabajos de la conferencia, que figura en el documento A/conf.226/3, las declaraciones en el debate general no deberán exceder de 5 minutos. Se recuerda a las delegaciones que se podrá publicar en el sitio web de la conferencia una versión más larga de sus declaraciones. Tengo ahora el honor de invitar al excelentísimo señor Nicolás Maduro Moros, presidente de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, a hacer uso de la palabra también en representación del movimiento no alineado, NAM, y pido al representante del protocolo que acompañe, por favor, a su excelencia. A continuación, procederemos con la declaración en nombre de las autoridades locales. Escucharemos ahora una declaración a cargo del señor Mauricio Esteban Rodas Espinel, alcalde del Distrito Metropolitano de Quito, como el representante de las autoridades locales.
Señora María de los Ángeles Duarte, vicepresidenta de la Conferencia Hábitat 3. Señor doctor Joan Clos, secretario general de la Conferencia. Señoras y señores jefes de delegación, queridos colegas alcaldes de todo el mundo que nos acompañan, representantes de la sociedad civil y de los diferentes sectores que participan en esta conferencia. On behalf of the people of Quito, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our beautiful city, the first one to be selected as a World Cultural Heritage in 1978 by the UNESCO and located in the middle of the world, but above all, a city with a big heart and that always receives visitors with open arms. Es un honor para mí como alcalde de Quito, a nombre del pueblo de nuestra ciudad, darles la bienvenida a esta que es la primera ciudad en haber sido seleccionada como Patrimonio Cultural de la Humanidad por la UNESCO. Estamos ubicados en la mitad del mundo, pero quizá nuestra principal característica es justamente el hecho de tener un gran corazón y que nuestro pueblo siempre recibe a sus visitantes con cariño y con los brazos abiertos. El secretario general de Naciones Unidas, Ban Ki-moon, señalaba que será en las ciudades en donde ganemos o perdamos la batalla por el desarrollo sostenible. Y es así si tomamos en cuenta que hoy en día más de la mitad de la población mundial vive en ciudades y que para el año 2030 se estima que 2/3 partes de los ciudadanos del mundo van a vivir en ciudades. Esto sin duda nos plantea retos y desafíos enormes, porque si bien las ciudades han sido en algunos casos sinónimo de progreso y modernidad para algunos, también se han convertido en enormes nichos de pobreza y de desigualdad para otros. Fenómenos humanos tan dramáticos como los que viven los refugiados, por ejemplo, muestran sus rostros más precarios en las ciudades. Son las ciudades también las que generan más del 70% de los gases de efecto invernadero. Esto solamente para mostrar algunos rasgos del por qué el avanzar hacia el desarrollo sostenible, como bien señala el secretario general Ban Ki-moon, es algo que depende en gran medida de lo que ocurra en las ciudades. Y en ese sentido, los gobiernos locales, como los entes gubernamentales más próximos a los ciudadanos, sin duda ejercemos un rol clave para el impulso de esquemas de progreso y equidad en las ciudades. Somos los gobiernos locales los entes más próximos no solo al ciudadano, sino también los que mayormente estamos sometidos a procesos de control y de escrutinio social. Somos también los gobiernos locales los que mayor conocimiento tenemos sobre lo que ocurre en el territorio. Y es en ese sentido que es fundamental el dotar a los gobiernos locales de mejores herramientas para cumplir sus objetivos, porque caso contrario será muy difícil lograr que en nuestras ciudades podamos avanzar hacia el desarrollo sostenible. Quiero destacar el hecho de que el proceso con miras a Hábitat 3 contó como nunca antes con un importante nivel de participación de los gobiernos locales, lo cual sin duda es una señal de apertura por la cual quiero además expresar nuestro agradecimiento a las Naciones Unidas. Pudimos participar, por ejemplo, en la definición de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible e incluir el objetivo número 11, que se refiere específicamente a las ciudades, así como también se logró un enfoque local para los 17 Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Y en la construcción de la nueva agenda urbana, que se aprobará aquí durante Hábitat 3, los gobiernos locales pudimos aportar ideas y visiones que enriquezcan justamente la Declaración de Quito. Estos son pasos muy importantes, pero debemos seguir avanzando. Si entendemos la vital importancia de los gobiernos locales para alcanzar los objetivos de desarrollo urbano sostenible, entonces tenemos que lograr un lugar en la mesa global de discusión sobre los temas urbanos. Es fundamental lograr un rol concreto y específico dentro del marco institucional de Naciones Unidas para que los gobiernos locales participemos de forma activa en la evaluación y el seguimiento respecto a la ejecución de la nueva agenda urbana, la discusión de las diferentes herramientas tanto de política pública como los mecanismos de financiamiento que harán posible que los principios e ideales plasmados en la nueva agenda urbana se conviertan en acciones concretas en beneficio de los ciudadanos. En este sentido, y gracias al trabajo conjunto de las diferentes redes de gobiernos locales y regionales del mundo, bajo el paraguas del Grupo de Trabajo Global, entregué ayer al Secretario General de Naciones Unidas un documento a nombre de los gobiernos locales del mundo, en el cual planteamos precisamente una propuesta para obtener un lugar en la mesa global. Quiero aprovechar esta ocasión para reiterar la voluntad de los gobiernos locales por trabajar de manera conjunta con los gobiernos nacionales y con el sistema de Naciones Unidas para concretar la aplicación de la nueva agenda urbana, las políticas que permitan hacer de las nuestras ciudades, en donde se impulse el crecimiento económico con un profundo enfoque de equidad social y el respeto al medio ambiente y a los recursos naturales. Ciudades en donde se consagre para todas y todos el derecho a la ciudad, la oportunidad de convivir de forma armónica entre ciudadanos en espacios públicos seguros y de calidad y gozando de servicios públicos de primer nivel, bajo un pleno respeto a la democracia, a las libertades y a los derechos humanos. Reiteramos entonces esta voluntad de trabajo conjunto con los gobiernos nacionales y el sistema de Naciones Unidas, pero también nos comprometemos a otorgarnos espacios concretos y específicos para nuestra participación en el marco internacional de discusión y aplicación de políticas urbanas, así como también el acceso a los instrumentos internacionales de financiamiento. Reiteramos el compromiso entonces de seguir trabajando los gobiernos locales, elevando una voz unificada para lograr el ideal de ciudades resilientes, seguras, inclusivas y sostenibles. Muchas gracias.
Doy las gracias al alcalde del Distrito Metropolitano de Quito por su intervención. A continuación,
Vicepresidente del Consejo de Estado de la República de Cuba, hacer uso de la palabra y pido al representante de protocolo que acompañe a su excelencia.
Estimado señor presidente de la República del Ecuador, Rafael Correa. Señores presidentes, ministros, distinguidas y distinguidos participantes en esta conferencia. Traigo un mensaje solidario al hermano pueblo y gobierno de Ecuador, que a pesar de haber sufrido tristes eventos, dignamente ha hecho realidad la celebración de la Conferencia sobre Vivienda y Desarrollo Urbano Sostenible, Hábitat Tercero. Deseo expresarle todo nuestro agradecimiento y apoyo para que esta conferencia sea un éxito, como estamos seguros sucederá. Agradezco la oportunidad de exponer nuestras consideraciones en el ámbito de esta reunión, que propicia la discusión de apremiantes temas que nos afectan a todos. El derecho a la ciudad presupone el acceso pleno y universal de todos sus habitantes a los beneficios económicos, sociales, culturales, civiles y políticos, lo cual dista de lo que acontece en la práctica contemporánea. Se precisa de una distribución justa y equitativa de la riqueza, de los ingresos y de las utilidades del crecimiento económico para lograr el desarrollo urbano sostenible y equitativo, el bienestar colectivo y la calidad de vida de sus habitantes. En ese proceso no podemos olvidar a los asentamientos humanos en las zonas rurales, que en muchos lugares se desarrollan de forma precaria. Pero no basta con los buenos deseos y las promesas. Se necesita voluntad política para enfrentar los retos y desafíos que la realidad nos impone. Como señalara el líder histórico de la Revolución Cubana, comandante Fidel Castro, en la conferencia Hábitat II en Estambul hace ya 20 años, y cito: se habla mucho hoy de la economía global y avances tecnológicos. ¿Para qué servirá todo esto si no se resuelven los problemas del hombre? Si los países ricos son cada vez más ricos y los pobres cada vez más pobres. ¿Con qué recursos daremos educación, salud, alimentos, vivienda y empleo, no solo a los que hoy viven en el mundo, sino a los casi 100 millones de seres humanos en que crece cada año la humanidad? Si con la reconversión industrial y la revolución tecnológica los propios países capitalistas desarrollados tienen cada vez más desempleo, ¿qué queda para nosotros, los olvidados de la tierra? Fin de la cita. Estas ideas tienen hoy total vigencia. Continúa siendo desigual la distribución de las riquezas, la transferencia de tecnología y recursos para los países más necesitados son insuficientes y las promesas de asistencia social para el desarrollo siguen sin cumplirse. Si la brecha entre países ricos y pobres continúa agrandándose y si no se ejercita una determinación de solidaridad, se mantendrán las dificultades para encarar los retos que el desarrollo económico y social nos impone y que afectan principalmente a los países subdesarrollados. Se trata de una responsabilidad que nos compete a todos. Cuba, pequeño estado insular en desarrollo, ha sido y continúa gravemente afectada por el férreo bloqueo económico, comercial y financiero que los Estados Unidos de América ha impuesto a nuestro pueblo por más de medio siglo. Adicionalmente, la persistencia de un entorno económico internacional desfavorable y la intensificación de fenómenos meteorológicos a consecuencia del cambio climático también impactan negativamente el desarrollo sostenible de los asentamientos humanos. Terremotos y huracanes azotan con mayor frecuencia muchas regiones del mundo. El huracán Matthew, que afectó recientemente nuestra región, como señaló el presidente Maduro, causó cuantiosos daños materiales a nuestro país, pero no hubo que lamentar pérdida de una sola vida humana, debido a la fortaleza del sistema de defensa civil que poseemos y a la preparación de la población y a las medidas oportunas adoptadas por nuestro gobierno. Señor presidente, distinguidas y distinguidos delegados, Cuba asume con determinación el reto de impulsar esta nueva agenda urbana y contribuir al cumplimiento del Objetivo de Desarrollo Sostenible número 11, para avanzar con equidad económica, social, cultural y ambiental en el acceso universal a una vivienda adecuada y una infraestructura urbana de calidad, aumentando los niveles de inclusión, seguridad, resiliencia y sostenibilidad de nuestras ciudades, pueblos y asentamientos rurales. Hemos trabajado con alto grado de compromiso y cumplido los objetivos de desarrollo del milenio, la educación, la salud universal, promover la igualdad de género, reducir la mortalidad infantil, mejorar la salud materna y luchar contra las enfermedades transmisibles. Nuestro país se plantea la gestión eficiente del suelo como objetivo de gobierno para satisfacer las necesidades crecientes de la sociedad y su desarrollo, como una fortaleza para el ordenamiento territorial y urbanístico en la gestión del futuro de las ciudades. La nueva agenda urbana impone un cambio de paradigma. Se requiere de la voluntad política de los gobiernos para implementar adecuadamente el planeamiento, articulando la perspectiva urbana con el desarrollo económico y social desde una visión multisectorial que preserve el medio ambiente, incorpore el enfoque de prevención y tribute el desarrollo sostenible. Por ello, la reducción del riesgo de desastre debe ser una prioridad de los Estados, manteniendo la atención a la comunidad en el ámbito de la vivienda y el urbanismo, con especial énfasis en los más vulnerables. Apoyamos los esfuerzos de ONU Habitat para implementar la nueva agenda urbana y les reitero el compromiso de Cuba en ese empeño. Muchas gracias.
I now want to say that we express sympathy to the Kingdom of Thailand upon the demise of His Majesty the King. And that what made it impossible for senior representatives to attend the conference. Again, we share our sympathy, and Thailand will now speak on behalf of the G77 and China.
I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of Group of 77 and China. Allow me to first express the group's appreciation to the government and the people of Ecuador for hosting the United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, Habitat 3, and for the warm hospitality extended to us here in Quito, with which the conference a great success. The group would also like to thank the co-facilitators for the negotiators of the draft outcome document of Habitat 3, His Excellency Lourdes Iapalagire, Permanent Representative of Philippines to United Nations in New York, and Mr. Damaso Luna Corona, Adjunct Director General for Sustainable Development of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, respectively. To the Secretariat of Habitat 3 for their tireless efforts, and our gratitude also goes to the Secretary General of the UN Habitat, and through him to UN Habitat for their continuous technical support to the process. Habitat 3 is the first intergovernmental conference to take place after the historic year of the adoption of the outcomes of 4 major conferences related to sustainable development. The conference shall contribute significantly to our efforts to the effective management of the challenges of rapid urbanization and provide an opportunity to promote a positive, mutually reinforcing relationship between cities and their surroundings across the human settlements continuum. Madam Chair, the issue of human settlements, of housing and sustainable urban development intrinsically linked to the core interests of the Group of 77 and China with the sustainable development domain. In fact, the group are the main sponsor of the implementation of the outcome of the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements and on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development and strengthening of the UN Habitat Resolution that is adopted every year by General Assembly of the United Nations. We reaffirm the principle of Habitat 2, including common but differentiated responsibilities and the twin goals of achieving adequate shelter for all and sustainable human resettlement development. We further reaffirm the right to development accordingly with the Declaration on the Right to Development, in particular for developing countries. Madam Chair, the Group of 77 in China reiterate our unwavering commitment and participation in Habitat 3 process actively and constructively, particularly the negotiations of the new urban agenda. We understand that the new agenda to be adopted this Thursday is a dedicated compromise. We thank government partners for working with us in order to reach a meaningful outcome which will guide us to a sustainable urbanization and human settlements in the next 20 years. We look forward to adopting the new urban agenda, which is our view is focused, forward-looking and action-oriented by giving adequate emphasis to implementation. The new agenda also strikes the technical and political balance and is inclusive, building on open-end consultative meetings, conclusions on policy units, and the regional and thematic meetings of the Habitat 3s. Allow me to highlight the group's view on the new urban agenda as follows. First, the new urban agenda is an agenda for cities and human settlements. Urban and rural areas are not interdependent and mutually supportive, but are also important engines: poverty eradication, economic growth, social inclusion, poverty eradication, and environmental protection. Second, the new agenda is comprehensive, seeks to balance the three dimensions of sustainable development. And reflect cross-cutting issues such as people-centered approach, age and gender responsive, planet sensitivity, climate change, culture and cultural diversity, sustainable consumption and production patterns, and resilience. Moreover, issues concerning poverty eradication, reducing inequalities, adequate housing, urban-rural linkage, territorial planning, integrated long-term approach to planning, urban governance, road safety, and diversity of human settlements are recognized. Third, we welcome the reference and clear interlinkage of the new urban agenda to the agreed outcome of the new Sustainable Development Framework, it is of utmost importance to advance towards an inclusive agenda founded on relevant outcomes and international agreements, including 2030 Development Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, the Chennai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and the Paris Agreement, among others. The 2030 Agenda includes its Goal 11, shall contribute to our efforts towards the effective management of challenges and providing an opportunity to promote a positive, mutually reinforced relationship between cities and their surroundings across the human settlement continuum through innovative, coordinated, clean, open, and shared development. Fourth, the group is of a firm belief that the law of international cooperation and commitment of developed countries are crucial in providing additional adequate, sustainable, and predictable means of implementation, including finance, in particular, official development assistance, technology transfer, or capacity enhancement as means to support national efforts and capabilities of developing countries to deal with human settlement and human in the new agenda. Existing gaps in capacity between developed and developing countries must be acknowledged. Fifth, in implementing the new urban agenda, we stress the particular attention that needs to be given to address the unique and emerging urban development challenges faced by developing countries, especially countries in special situations, in particular African countries, less developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, as well as specific challenges that many middle-income countries faced. Conflict and post-conflict countries and countries and peoples living under foreign occupation, different national realities, capacities, and levels of development and respect of national policy and priorities must also be taken in account. And finally, a strong organizational machinery for implementing the new urban agenda and issues related to sustainable urban development and human settlements must be put in place. The law and expertise of UN Habitat, which in its headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya, should be emphasized. The group remains firmly supportive of enhancing the effectiveness of the UN Habitat in both its normative and operational work, which includes provide capacity development and tools to national, subnational, and local governments in designing, planning, and managing sustainable urban development. We look forward to the recommendations of the independent assessment and the two-day high-level meeting of the General Assembly during the 71st session, which is issue of the effective implementation of the new urban agenda, and the positioning of UN Habitat will be discussed. Last but not least, on follow-up and review of new urban agenda, it is important to include the view of the global progress in the implementation the agenda as part of the integrated and coordinated follow-up process to the United Nations Conference and Summits, aligned with the General Assembly, ECOSOC, the High-Level Political Forum, and the quadrennial comprehensive policy review cycles as appropriate, taking fully into account any existing mechanism of Habitat 1 and 2, the UN Habitat Governing Council, for instance. Madam Chair, these are some of the highlights which the group deemed important. The group are of a firm belief that sustainable urban development and human settlements can be a key driver of sustainable development in national and subnational development plans. We are guided by a vision of cities and human settlement characterized by quality of life, equity, sustainable environment, and an inclusive economy, ensuring city and human settlements as a positive force for achieving sustainable development. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Excellency, Salvador Valdez Mesa, Vice President of the Council of State of the Republic of Cuba. Protocol, please escort His Excellency.
Estimado señor presidente.
Distinguished President of the Republic of Ecuador, Rafael Correa. Presidents, ministers, distinguished participants in this conference. I bring to you a message of solidarity to the people and government of Ecuador. In spite of very sad events, Ecuador has with great dignity made this conference on housing and sustainable urban development, Habitat 3, a reality. I'd like to convey our gratitude and support and wishes of great success for this conference, and we're sure that it will be successful. I'm thankful for this opportunity to share our thoughts within the framework of this meeting, which is about pressing topics that affect all of us. The right to the city presupposes full and universal access for all inhabitants to economic, social, cultural, civil, and political benefits. And this is a far cry of what we see in current daily practice. We need fair and equitable distribution of wealth, of revenues, and tools for economic development to reach sustainable and equitable urban development, collective well-being, and high quality of life for all. In this process, we cannot and should not forget human settlements in rural areas, which in many cases developed in a precarious fashion. Of course, good wishes and promises are not enough. What we need is political will to take up the great challenges that reality places before us. As the historic leader of the Cuban Revolution, Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro, mentioned in the Habitat 2 conference in Istanbul 20 years ago, I quote, "Today there's a lot of talk about global economy and technological progress, but what is the good of it all if it does not resolve the problems of human beings, if rich countries get richer all the time and the poor get poorer? With what resources will we provide education, health, food, housing, and employment, not only to those who live in the world today, but to the nearly 100 million human beings added to humanity every year? With industrial reconversion and technological revolution, developed capitalist countries have more and more unemployment. What to say about us, the forgotten of this world? End of quotation. These ideas are as vital today as ever. We still see unequal distribution of wealth, the transfer of technology and resources for the countries that need them most is insufficient, and promises of official development assistance do not materialize. If the gap between rich and poor countries continues growing, if we see no real commitment to solidarity, difficulties will continue in terms of responding to the challenges of economic and social development, which mainly affect underdeveloped countries. This is about our shared responsibility for all of us. Cuba, a small developing island nation, has been and continues to be seriously affected by the hard economic, trade and financial embargo imposed by the United States of America on our people over more than half a century. In addition, the continuing unfavorable economic environment and the intensification of negative meteorological phenomena as a result of climate change also have an impact on sustainable development of human settlements. Earthquakes and hurricanes strike us with greater frequency, and the same goes for many regions of the world. Hurricane Matthew, which recently had a great impact on our region, as President Maduro pointed out, caused great material damage to our country. But we did not have to mourn a single loss of human life. And this is thanks to the strength of our civil defense system, the fact that the population was prepared, and that timely measures were taken by our government. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, Cuba takes up with great determination the challenge of promoting this new urban agenda and contributing toward the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal number 11 to move toward economic, social, cultural, and environmental fairness and equitability, universal access to adequate housing, a high-quality urban infrastructure, raising the levels of inclusion, safety, resilience, and sustainability in our cities, villages, and rural settlements. We have worked with great commitment and accomplished Millennium Development Goals: education, universal health care, promoting gender equality, reducing child mortality, improving mothers' health, and fighting against contagious diseases. Our country focuses on efficient management of land as an objective of the government to satisfy the growing needs of society and its development. As a point of strength for territorial and urban ordering and management of the future of our cities, the new urban agenda demands a change of paradigm. We need the government to have political will to adequately plan, articulate urban prospects for social and economic development, put forward a multi-sectoral vision which preserves the environment, includes the focus on prevention, and promotes sustainable development. For these reasons, disaster risk reduction must be a priority for states. We must keep our focus on the community and in the area of housing and urban development with a special emphasis on the most vulnerable among us. We support the efforts of UN Habitat in implementing the new urban agenda, and I reiterate Cuba's commitment in this regard. Thank you very much.